Well, even when it's cold and snowing and the wind chill is at or below zero, there's still things that have to be done. Animals still need to be taken care of. Chickens need to be fed. Need to pour a little water for them so they can get a drink if they're thirsty, but they're chickens, so they don't have any idea if they're thirsty or not. Maybe they eat snow. I know the dogs do. But you still got to get outside in it. And when you're talking about preparedness and after the collapse and all that kind of stuff, you're going to have to spend some time outside, even if it's not what you're normally used to doing. And that's what we're going to talk about, is staying warm when it's cold outside. We'll talk about that here in just a second. It is winter time here on the high plains of Texas, and I hope you can hear me over the sound of the wind that's blowing right now. The wind's blowing about a steady 17 to 20 miles an hour with gusts up to and a little bit over 25. That means it's cold. The temperature right now is about 16 degrees, I think, maybe 17 degrees. It's going down, so I'm not for sure which. And I say the high plains of Texas, South Plains, because we're at about just a little under 4,000 feet here. You don't think about Texas as getting some real winter weather, but I can assure you, we get plenty of winter time. This is one of those days right now. We got a little bit of snow. We were hoping for a whole bunch, but we only got about an inch or so. You know, if you measure in a drift, it's a lot more. If you get out in an open spot, there's nothing. That's the way it works here. But when the winter time comes around, there's still stuff that needs to be done. If you consider yourself a preparedness-minded individual, somebody that wants to be ready for post-collapse and dealing with life after everything shuts down, if it does, who knows, maybe it will, maybe it won't, you got to be ready for that. A lot of people talk about maybe we're going to have a what global warming, I think they call it, that's coming to get us. Going to heat up the world by nearly 3 degrees. That'd be pretty awful, wouldn't it? But what a lot of other people seem to think is that we're going to have more global cooling, maybe even something resembling an ice age or a mini ice age. That doesn't mean we're going to be covered up with glaciers, but it does mean it may stay cold a whole lot longer. Maybe. But it's going to get cold almost for sure. That's how it works in the wintertime. It gets cold. And you got to be ready to come out and deal with it when it does. I do pretty good at that. Even though I'm getting older, you know, a lot of older people stay cold all the time. They don't get warm. I tend to get warm. I stay warm. Maybe living for all those years I did up at about 10,000 feet in Colorado in a ski town way up in the mountains, I learned a little bit about staying warm, I guess. I'm completely comfortable right now except for my chin because I dropped my hood just now and I'm letting the wind get under there. The wind chill is a significant thing right now. And my chin is cold, no question about it. I'm gonna put my hood back up here. See if I can mitigate that a little bit. The trick to doing it is dressing in layers. We're gonna go inside a little bit. I'm gonna do sort of a striptease for you. Not as much as you wish I would. But I'm going to show you how I'm dressed and what I've got. I've got nothing fancy at all. You can see big old hole in my Bib Overalls here. I got cotton gloves on. I don't have some super high-tech fiber material, just a plain old pair of cotton work gloves. And like I say, except for my chin, I'm toasty and comfortable right now. And when I'm moving around doing stuff, I'm even more comfortable and almost need to shed a layer or two. You know, you would think that it would be hard to stay warm in weather like this, and if you don't dress right, it will be hard to stay warm. So we're going to go inside. I'm going to show you what I got. And you know, it seems like a straightforward thing, but there's a lot of people I come across that don't seem to have any idea how to do it. So we'll talk about it just for a couple of minutes. All right, back inside now. And I can tell you, it is cold enough out there to freeze up your mustache just right quick. So let's talk about how we stay warm. Since I'm going to take it off in order, we'll talk about it in that order. First thing is gloves. Hands get cold, fingertips especially. Here's a little principle about staying warm. I'm going to tell it even though I assume everybody probably knows it. Your body is going to keep the heat where it needs to keep the heat first. Your body needs to keep your central organs warm, and it needs to keep your head warm. That's the place where all of your life comes from. Everything going on in your body just about comes from your life. Your thighs are your next important things because that's where a lot of the blood is produced, and Just went blank on the femurs, where the blood gets produced there. The areas that are going to get cold first are the ones that the body doesn't consider as necessary to stay alive. That would be toes and fingers and feet and hands, arms and legs, working their way up towards the core. That's why people get frostbite on those areas first, not because they get cold necessarily easier, although they do, but because the body is going to rob heat from those areas to keep the more important parts warm. So you got to keep those areas heated up too. For me, I've always said warm hands. I really do. Warm hands, warm heart, something like that. I don't know. It depends on who you ask. But in snow skiing, I was always the guy that would trade gloves with people whose hands were cold, and they would put on my gloves, which would be nice and warm, and I would wear their gloves, which would be cold when I put them on. Usually we'd do it while we were riding a ski lift or maybe trading a couple of runs, or if we were out hiking doing something like that, same kind of thing. I guess I got good blood flow, good circulation in my hands, and so that's what we would do. So for keeping my hands warm in weather like this, I just got a plain old pair of cotton gloves. I mean, they are nothing special, just work gloves. That's all they are. They're not waterproof, they're not anything to that point. If they get wet, they are not as warm. Big surprise, that's how that works too. But when it's like this, there's nothing much wet out there that I'm handling. I can handle the snow, but the snow here is really dry. Now, other parts of the world, the snow is not so dry. Sometimes it's not that dry here. On those cases, yes, you need a pair of gloves that's going to be a little more waterproof, or you need a pair of over gloves that will repel the water and keep them dry. Best bet is to have a spare pair of gloves stuck in your pocket, so when you do get wet gloves and your hands start getting cold, you can swap into them. So, gloves. Next trick, hat. Oh, I'm going to take my hat off. This is going to be awful. My hair, there's no telling what my hair is going to look like, so I'm going to put it back on in a second. But in this case, I've got just a wool. I don't even know if it's wool. Let's see what it says it is. I guarantee it's not wool. It is not going to tell me. Really? It's not going to tell me. I can't believe it. Surely to goodness. 100% acrylic. Now this hat happens to be made by a certain brand of clothing, which is very much out of favor with us right now. But I got this thing as a Christmas present just this past Christmas, a month ago now. And it is completely comfortable and warm, however sad that is. So I just turned the label where not everybody can see it. Okay, enough hat head. Put this back on. The idea of keeping something on your head is because you lose a lot of heat through your head. You really do. You lose a ton of heat through your head. Keep your head a little bit warmer. It preserves the heat for places like fingertips and toes better. Next item is the over outer garment, which in this case is a coat. And it's not made by that particular name brand, although it's the same style. The trick to wearing a coat like this coat, I don't know if you can tell it, is not particularly thick. It really isn't. And it's also cotton. It's just good old, durable denim, canvas, whatever it is, kind of material. But the trick with it is it's oversized. It is large. It is made, I don't know if it's made, I bought it oversized though, to wear over the top of everything else. It's just kind of the outer shell that lets me put on whatever else I want underneath. The next layer is a pair of bib overalls. Now, we'll talk for a second about a pair of bibs or a pair of coveralls. I like bibs better because in layering, you don't want to get too hot. You get too hot, you start sweating, and then you're wet from up underneath, which is a lot harder to get dried out. The bibs make it real easy to shuck a layer of clothing like the coat, or to pull this off, pull these guys loose, and get rid of this next garment, which is just a quilted, kind of a quilted shirt jacket. I don't even know what this thing is. My mom got it for me a long time ago. I don't strangle myself getting it off. It is also kind of loose fitting to accommodate being over the top of some of the other stuff I've got on. By the way, I can tell you it is not warm. I'm out here in my shop and it is not warm out here. In fact, water bottle froze up solid. That one, yep, that one too. Yeah, not going to get a drink out of those guys. I think, let's look. It's actually 21 degrees in here, so that's easily 5 degrees warmer than it is outside. All right, now I showed you I got the coveralls on, and the good thing about bibs, I said coveralls. The good thing about my bibs is they got a zipper that goes up the leg, which you can also open to ventilate out a little bit to keep from getting too hot. And it also makes it easier to get on and off over a pair of shoes that you've got on. That's an important thing sometimes, not always. Now, for pants, I don't have a pair of work pants on. I got a pair of sweatpants on. Not glamorous. I'm dressed to go to Walmart, I guess. But the sweats, because they're kind of thick, and again, they're cotton. Everything I got on is cotton. So we're talking about where I live in a dry climate. Remember, if you're somewhere where it gets wet, you're going to need something that's a little bit waterproof. But for what I'm doing right now, dry is the key thing here, the main thing. Anyway, the sweats do the job. Boots, I've just got on a pair of leather boots, my work boots. If I can get my foot up there. Nothing fancy there, and just a plain old pair of cotton socks under that. Now, I'm going to get a lot of people poo-pooing all this because they say that's not how you're supposed to do it. That's not the right stuff. And when I lived up in the mountains of Colorado, I usually did not wear a pair of leather boots like this because they would get wet. Up there, it was deep snow all the time, and you would get wet. So I wore something that was more waterproof. I had shoes that were waterproof. I had a pair of Sorels, you know, the kind of shoes that are made to wear in that kind of condition. But for down here, this does the job. Now, beyond that, I just got a sweatshirt on. This is a brand new one my wife got me, so I'm not going to get it dirty. And then under that, a cotton t-shirt or two. And of course, a good layer of insulation that I have worked many years to accumulate. Staying warm is not impossible to do. Most of the time, it's not even hard to do if you're ready. I carry this stuff in my pickup all the time. When it gets to be wintertime, I've always got these layers I can put on. I have been out in much more severe conditions. My mustache is melting. I've been out in a lot more severe conditions than this and been just fine. The most severe I can think of was a few years ago when one of my girls and I came out here. We were staying in town at my dad's house over Christmas, and we got a blizzard that literally we had to dig out of my dad's front door. Now, that doesn't mean we got that much snow, but because of the way the wind blows, it drifts it up, makes huge piles. The pile in front of our house was taller than the house. We literally had to climb up over the top. We could see across to our backyard and then back down the front of it, and had to dig out there and dig steps into it so we could get to our front door. That was one of those storms where literally snow piled up on fences, and people with horses, the horses just walked over the snowdrift because the drift packed in so hard. The horses just walked up and over the drift and out of the fence. There were cows, people had cows. They were scattered miles and miles around here. It was a mess. But at one point, when we were going home, we had to go down a road. The snow was blowing out of the north. A little quick story here. The snow was blowing out of the north, which means the north-south roads were open. Not even any snow on them, blown completely down to the dirt. The east-west roads were where the drifts happened, because if there was something to slow the wind down just a little bit, the snow could pile up there. That's how a snowdrift works. You know, you see places where they put up snow fences. It's not to stop the snow, it's to make it drift up in a certain spot and keep it from going where they don't want it to be. Well, that's what it was doing here. It took me to get out through there. I mean, we had to go one way or the other. That was the closest way to get to the highway where we wanted to go home. I had to get out of the truck and dig through about 5 or 6 feet of snow and pull forward 3 or 4 feet, dig some more, pull forward some more. As I pulled forward, the drift was filling in behind us. And by the time I got dug out the other side of it, about an hour, I think it took me just over an hour to dig through that and get out the other side. The drift had filled in behind me, and you couldn't even tell we'd been through it. But I was dressed like this. I got too warm in that. With the wind, oh my gosh, the wind was howling. I bet the wind was blowing 40, 50 miles an hour. West of here over in New Mexico, the wind blew hard enough that it literally blew a train off of the tracks during that storm. That's how awful it was. The whole point of that is that with this system right here, I stayed warm. I was warm and comfortable and wore out by the time I dug that much snow. But that's the trick. When you get out in the snow, layer up. When you get out in the cold and the wind, layers are your friend. You know, I don't know what else to even say about it. You know, tell me in the comments, you know, what you do, wherever you live. I know you guys that live up north, you guys that live where it rains a lot, where it's a wet climate, you have to do it a little bit different. But don't get caught unprepared. You know, recently we had that disaster up there where people were trapped on the road somewhere. I'm going to say Virginia. I don't remember if that's where it was for sure. And they just weren't ready for it. Be ready for it. Have some extra clothes, a blanket, some water in your car, your truck, whatever. Be ready for bad weather. Bad weather is really just an inconvenience. It seems like an emergency sometimes, but it's really not. If you're ready for it, it's just an inconvenience, and it can be an adventure. So here's to adventures. I don't have anything to drink because my water's frozen. I was going to toast to adventures. I can't do it. Anyway, just something to think about, and thanks, guys. I'm going to get dressed back up. I'm getting cold. Watch the tumbleweeds blowing by.